We don't have standby generators. We tell the mothers to bring torchlights when they are coming to deliver.
How confident are you in Ghana's health delivery system and frontline workers forgotten? This is about lives and the silence that's killing us. Join the National Forum on May 7th as we discuss improving our health delivery, the state of health facilities in Ghana, on air, online, and all other platforms.
Now, prior to the 2024 general election, there was the general sentiment of a perceived arrogance on the part of some of the government appointees, a concern of waste and mismanagement of resources, and a seeming lack of public accountability. A campaign promise that criticized the now opposition party is seen written on paper, the public conduct of 2025. Now, at the launch of these guidelines yesterday, the president also made it clear that those who disobeyed his earlier directive to declare their asset had automatically lost 4 months of their salaries, 3 for their disobedience and 1 to his Mahama Cares Foundation. In this 66-page document, the Mahama government seems to want to right the wrongs and set what may be seen by sympathizers as a better precedent for the political landscape as regards the relationship between the appointee, the governed, and the goods of the land, in this case, Ghana. From ministerial travels to declaration of assets and liabilities to conflict of interest issues, ministerial accountability, gifts and family and friends in government, the president seems to have clarity on what he wants his second presidency to look like. But there are questions, though, on how the president will enforce these codes to the latter as spelled out. What do these mean for the future of the conduct of public officers and political appointees? Hello, good evening, and welcome to Agenda. My name is Beatrice, and tonight we will go into the recently launched Code of Conduct for Public Officers under the government and the way forward. I do have on the panel with me Nanaya Jantua. She's a presidential staffer. Good evening to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda tonight.
Good evening to you, Beatrice.
I have on my left Professor Enoch Opokwenchi. He is governance and leadership expert. Prof, good evening. Thank you also for joining us on Agenda.
Good evening, Beatrice. I'm always thrilled to be here. You know, my mom is also Beatrice.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. Great to hear. Okay, we are happy to also have with us Professor Bafwa Jimandia. He's former UN Senior Governance Advisor. Good evening to you, Prof. Thank you as well for joining us on Agenda tonight.
Thank you, and good evening to my very good friends. And Nanaya Jantua, a great lady. I'm happy to share the panel, the same with Professor Andrew.
All right, and of course, last but not the least, Mariada. Madam Mariada is Executive Director. Okay. She's the Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Transparency International Ghana. Good evening to you as well, ma'am. Thank you so much. We're happy to have you here.
Good evening, and good evening to the other panelists as well as your cherished viewers.
And of course, I just talked to you about these, the code of conduct that's been launched. I want to bring to you, in case you haven't had the opportunity to look at what they are, beyond what the president said yesterday at that launch, I want to bring to you some of the highlights of this code of conduct as spelled out yesterday. So, in terms of integrity and accountability, the president said that government appointees must act with integrity and impartiality, prioritize national over personal interests, avoid misuse of office or state resources, declare and manage conflicts of interest, avoid opulence, account for every cedi spent, and serve humbly and respectfully. Also, the president was very particular about friends and family in government, and he said that do not make decisions favoring relatives or close friends or recommend them for contract or appointment. Even the appearance of bias undermines your office. Of course, he also went on again, still under conflict of interest, that any appointee, and in this document that I just talked about, the 66-page document, he refers to all the public officers and appointees as ministers. He says they must disclose any conflict between personal interest and official duties. This includes business stakes linked to government, insider knowledge for personal gain, or contract-connected entities. Disclosures must be written. Calls or intermediaries are not acceptable. Failure results in disciplinary action. He talks about gifts and hampers. Do not accept gifts or favors from interested parties. Gifts above 20,000 Ghana cedis must be declared and surrounded upon leaving office unless the president permits retention. The government funds must not be used for hampers except modest staff rewards or approved commercial policy distributions with prior clearance from the Chief of Staff. Also, in terms of travel, and that was one of the things that the president talked about most, even ahead of the 2024 general election, he said that all international travel requires prior approval from the Chief of Staff. Submit a report and retire any impress within 14 days of return. Trips must be necessary, budgeted and aligned with national goals. No retroactive approvals. State assets. He said appointees are barred from purchasing state assets, land, vehicles, buildings or shares directly or indirectly. Violators will be dismissed. And I'm sure you remember that ahead of the elections, the president talked about state capture, not just him, but other government opposition leaders at the time. Also, public reporting. He said a confidential public portal will allow reporting of suspected breaches for impartial investigation. Sanctions, violations attract sanctions ranging from a public apology to termination. And when we do have the time, we'll take you through those sanctions the president talked about, a bit more detail to that in the course of our conversation. Also, penalties for missed declaration deadline, and appointees or nominees before 31st of March 2025 who missed the declaration deadline must forfeit 3 months' salary to the Mahama Cares Health Trust Fund in addition to 1 month voluntary donation. And so those are just summaries, really, of the code of conduct launched by the president yesterday, and you get the full one on 3news.com as well. Remember that we're streaming live on 3FM and 92.7. Send us your comments and we will read them back to you. I want to start with you, Madam Nanaya Jantua. First of all, there are a number of promises and legal frameworks, as it were, including the asset declaration that I'm sure you're aware of, and normally called the Public Office Holders Act. That's Act 550. I can go on to talk about Article 286 of the 1992 Constitution and the Conduct of Public Officers Bill yet to be passed, among others. Why this Code of Conduct 2025 now?
Thank you very much. Why do you want me to start, Beatrice?
Start from where you can.
Let me say good evening to you, good evening to your viewers, good evening to yourself, and good evening to Prof and my uncle, Professor Ajimanjia, and Mrs. Ada, Auntie Mary Ada. I think this is very key and it's very important, and it comes close to home to everybody that when you are given a position as a public appointee or a government appointee holding a public office, you ought to be careful how you behave, because you are holding the position in trust for the people of Ghana. It is not your personal position. Even if you have a private business, you need to know how to conduct yourself. One thing that, has run through, even from the time His Excellency Mahama was campaigning in 2024 and now, is the issue of humility, is the issue of probity, the issue of accountability. So for me, this is very key. I wish it could be extended to the whole of Ghana, so that we live by certain standards. Of course, there are laws, but this has been broken down for you to know exactly what you have to do. And most of the laws that we have are just hidden in books, in the Constitution, and people don't even know what are in there. I always said that one holiday that was not very useful was the Constitution Day. But that day was a day I thought would have been used to discuss the Constitution and what is therein. So this is, I don't think it's not far off from anything. It is a good thing, and I've said and I reiterate that I wish it could be extended to everybody in this country. So we live by certain codes, we live by certain standards. For instance, if you are out of this country, you are not told what to do, but you know that you can't do A, B, C, D.
And I'll come back to you. I want to get the preliminary thoughts of Professor Opoku-Antwi as well. Does it matter that we have these, especially when I have mentioned that already we have a tall list of legislative instruments or, these legal frameworks that are supposed to guide us?
Thank you very much, and protocol observed to all my fellow panelists. It matters a lot. Why? Because we have the 10 Commandments for Christians. Why does that matter? We have the Sharia law for our Muslim brothers and sisters. Why does that matter? Traditionally, we have laws. We have the Constitution, which is a law. And just like any organization that you are hired, we have the policies and procedures that also guides your behavior. And I keep saying everywhere that I go that the law is the least bar of every society. The moral compass is the highest bar. So if moral people are upright, then you would not even break the law. I've lived in many other countries that I don't even know where the police station is because I'm not breaking any law, so I have no problem with the police or the law. Now, let me define governance, then you understand why this matters. Governance is the coming together of a group of elected or appointed individuals to act as one for the purpose of guiding the people of which they hold trusteeship towards the accomplishment of its ends while establishing appropriate boundaries for accountability. So if you look at the definition of governance, as Nanaya talked about, trusteeship is very key. You are holding the position in trust. And in doing that, you have to render accountability. And how do you render that? There should be a guideline, a moral compass. And that is when this code of conduct comes into play.
I want to come to you, Prof, and really, whether or not you see this making any difference at all, especially when it comes to good governance and the fight against corruption?
Well, first of all, I think this code should have been, been expecting this for a very long time. That the previous government, there were talks about that, but it never happened. So I'm very personally happy that President Mahama had decided to produce this, a 66-page document encompassing all possible or conceivable behavior of public officials and proposing ways for them to behave themselves whilst in public office. And I think it's good. It's good because, as my colleague just said, they need that kind of guidance. And of course, the challenge will be when it comes to implement. If it's taking effect immediately, then of course you have to begin to see how public officials address themselves to this code. Interestingly, this is not just for ministers or government appointees. Even the civil service is included in the document. So it's very wide-ranging, and it covers any conceivable behavior that one could expect from officials. So in that respect, I think the president has done well putting this to the public. And we are now going to see how the officials comply with this coup.
You say that you expected this to have been done before the elections of 2024. Would it have made any difference?
Oh, not really. No, I said this is long in coming because, as you know, Code of Conduct back in the early 2000s, when we were advocating, I was then a CDD. The Code of Conduct was one of the issues that we impressed on government to do. Of course, we know it's written in the Constitution. But what this government has done, this president has done, is to put meat on it, expanding it, and that, I think, is not just towards the elections. It's something that previous governments should have seriously considered and done. I know the last time the previous government wanted to do it, they were talking about submitting to Parliament for legislation, which have been fine. But in my view, if we're talking about legislation making a difference, then Ghana should be a paradigm because we have all conceivable laws. So making it a legislation will not necessarily get people to behave themselves. I think what is important is if this government is able to set up a machinery that will monitor and report. Because some of the behaviors, if they are not reported, you wouldn't know. Like the gift giving. He's saying that if you get something worth more than 20,000 cedis, report it or present it to the chief of staff. Now, if somebody travels abroad and the person lacks integrity and keeps this gift, I mean, how do we know? So to a large extent, any code of conduct, any ethical code requires self-discipline and the commitment of the individuals who are involved. So we are hoping that with the leadership of the president himself giving some 2 cars, I understand the other day, cars that were gifted to him, he now passed them on to the state. And if you recall, during his first term, he received a car, and I think he took some public comments before finally he gave to the state. So I think he has learned from that experience. That's why I believe that this time around, he's really serious about this, and we hope that his appointees will live by this new ethical code.
And I want to come to you, Madam Mariada, but let me ask a last question of Prof. Before I come to you. I think it's implementation. Beyond the setting up of a machinery to monitor some of the things that we may not necessarily see, do you foresee an implementation challenge ahead?
Certainly, if you read the code, I mean, it's not simple. It's really challenging to all public officials. It even includes the assets declaration, which some officers somehow fail to meet in terms of the president's own deadline. So it's going to be a challenge. That's what I'm saying. It's going to test the integrity and credibility of the public official. The president is not going to be a headmaster who will be going around every day to check whether you are conducting yourself in your office. No, but there must be a way for the president to know whether the officials are complying with the code. That is the mechanism I was talking about. Maybe within the governmental circles, something will be set up to do that. Otherwise, I think whether people follow the code or not, it will be difficult for the president to know in order to sanction them as promised.
I'll come back to you, Prof. I'm coming to you, Madam Mariada. I know that one of the things you've been championing, for instance, is the passage of the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. And as early as February 2025, I want to believe you talked about it, that will help nip corruption in the bud. Do you see this as an addition or something that will help?
So thank you very much. And again, let me say good evening to the other panelists. And to say that, yes, certainly what we have called for is the fact that we need to codify some of the issues around public office conduct as per the Constitution when it stipulates in Article 286 and others. When you go to 287 as well, the issue of gifts are there. So we want to see a law that is passed, not because the laws are ideal and may be able to nip the bud of corruption in the bud forever, but for the fact that there is supposed to be an element of criminalization of conflict of interest and also the issue around gifts, so that when we want to implement effective sanctioning, we can do so. We want to, for instance, if you take this code of conduct that is done that beautifully, and let me quickly say that we want to commend the president for taking this initiative. It is a good one. We cannot run away from that. That the president wants his appointees to live by a certain code, and we cannot run away from that. That he wants to see very good and effective as well as efficient processes going on within government. So this is a good initiative. But then to say that if tomorrow we have somebody else in power who is not thinking about this, then we'll have a problem. That's why we want to see the issue around the conduct of public officers, which has gone through several parliaments now since 2013, when the president, current president, was also president. Shraj put this together. And let me say, most of the things that are captured here are also located in the bill. And so when we ask for it, we are not asking for something that is extremely different. We are just saying that some of the conducts are not criminalized. Let's see how we criminalize them. Let's see how we are working as a state to ensure that conduct of every person who wants to work in public office is well regulated, because we don't want discretion or excessive discretion to be what we want to see. But we have no challenge at all. I have gone through the document, and I believe it's very robust, and it will serve the purpose for which the president wants to put this in place. And I believe that if we have the element of compulsion and as well the element of supervision and monitoring, then we would have a very effective regime that captures, as the document talks about, ministerial conduct. But then it's implied to say that each and every appointee of government of the president is supposed to live by these conduct. So for us, it's a good first step, but it is not exhaustive enough, because if let's say President Mahama is not there and somebody else comes and decides that he wants to do something else, that is unfortunate. We want something that goes beyond regimes. We want something we can all go back to, because today we are talking about issues around conflict of interest and the challenges therein. We are talking about issues of conduct. We continue to say there are a lot of challenges with it.
So do I hear you say that, and I'll come back to Nana Yaa-Jantoa shortly, do I hear you say that you do not want this to be short-lived under the Mahama administration, but after he's gone, whichever government or president comes in should continue this initiative? Is that what you're saying?
If the person who comes in also believes that he wants to regulate the conduct of his appointees, certainly why not? Because this is a very good document. We do not want to produce documents and throw them away. We want to see this document used by all. And to do that effectively, I want to say that we need to go back to the conduct of public officers. Then we can say that people can develop this. And this is a brilliant document. It doesn't matter who develops it. The fact is that it is restrictive for me. We need to go beyond just appointees. And like one of the panelists said, it should be mainstreamed to include every other appointee in the public service and not just the political appointees in this instance.
Indeed, Nana Yaa-Jantoa said that, and I'm coming back to her. I mean, we heard Professor Bafo-Agyeman-Duah talk about implementation. How sure are you that the president is going to enforce this to the latter? Mind you, that Yes, he is elected for the country, but he belongs to a political party, and sometimes the party may wield power and it may be difficult to touch, quote unquote, the untouchables in the party.
Beatrice, you see, when it comes to code of conduct, there is no untouchables. That is why we have institutions that are supposed to investigate some of these matters. And also the fact that, I mean, as an appointee, as a public servant, you yourself should have a code of conduct for the way you will live, because immediately you get into that public space, you should be able to understand how you live your life or how you conduct yourself. So even without a document telling you what you have to do, you need, because eyes are watching you. The whole country is watching you. Whatever you do, whatever you say. Because you see, sometimes you wonder, somebody will bring, I work in the public service for 27 years. Somebody will bring you something and you think that is what it is. Immediately he goes, he tells somebody else that this person took this and did this for me. Do you get me? So after the information, it will run round. But certainly, there will be, now the code has come, they are still working on it. There will be a mechanism to monitor people. If there's no mechanism at all, the audit report from the Auditor General's department will tell us how people are faring as far as corruption is concerned. The code even talks about your private life, how you even live your private life, your private space, how you even speak to people, how you speak publicly. This is all part of it. But I am saying that as a public servant, as an appointee of the president, that you're also a public servant, you should know that you have to live in a certain way. Maybe, as you said, one of the challenges may be trying to find a job for a loved one, a friend, putting in a word. Do you get me? That might be a gray area. But if the code says that you don't have to do that, you don't have to do that. Let the person go through the process, apply. If somebody needs a job and the person is your relative, let them say what they want to say. The person should go through the process. The person should be qualified. So
you're saying code of conduct is code of conduct. Yet, yes. We heard the president give that directive for the 31st of March for public or his appointees to declare their assets.
Yeah.
And there are some who didn't declare their assets. A number of people were expecting that the president would have dismissed them, but he rather gave grace period and said, "You've lost 4 months of your salary."
It's still a punishment. 4 months of your salary is no small joke. It's still a punishment. I mean, if somebody has breached and he's given a grace period, so now he's saying that after Wednesday, if you haven't done it, you're automatically sacked. Do you understand?
But they are saying he should have done that when he gave that 31st March.
He should have done.
He should have ensured that those who didn't comply with that first date.
See, there might be reasons why people haven't complied and he cannot talk about it. And there are things that you can't just say. Maybe there were some challenges, there were hitches. There were people who even did it and made some mistake. They have to go back and correct and all that. So this one, I mean, he has given a deadline. And that is, now he has extended the deadline to, I think, tomorrow.
7 is tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. So he says after tomorrow, automatically you are sacked.
Have you declared your assets?
Everybody's saying I haven't declared my assets, so let's see how it goes.
Have you declared your assets?
Why? Everybody is saying it. About 40-something people, names came out. It's me, one person, and I Janto. Everybody is saying it. So we'll find out. Fortunately,
you're here. Are you able to answer a yes or no? Have you declared your assets?
We will see what the sanctions will go.
I would ask you the last time. If you don't, you have declared your assets.
Yes, I have. Why not? I have.
So you did before the 31st
yes, I've declared my assets.
March.
Yes, I've declared my assets.
I want to come to you, Prof. In terms of challenges with implementation, what do you foresee, and whether or not indeed the president is going to walk his talk?
Any country in the advanced world and even in developing countries, once you bring such policies, people will find ways to test the pulse of the president. It's everywhere. That's human behavior. And so the enforcement should be strict. That is why I was proud that the president said that there's not going to be any sacred cow. That means that everybody will be involved in the process. He, the president, is involved, the vice president, or appointees, and that is modeling the way. If you look at a couple of things that I am so proud of him doing it, the first one is influence peddling. you see that it's a very critical issue in fighting corruption. We had a case study where a former Deputy Minister of Finance was caught for influence peddling. The OSP, Office of the Special Prosecutor, came in and said that there's nothing in our constitution that talks about influence peddling. So the person was allowed to go scot-free. Look, influence peddling is corruption. Why? Because the simple definition of corruption is using public influence for private gains. So if I say that I can let somebody see you, Beatrice, and before you see Beatrice, pay me $10,000, and you pay me $10,000, and I'm able to let you see Beatrice, that is corruption.
So are you saying that this code of conduct, for instance,
yes, it
with
fixes
respect
that.
to effect, although it is currently for
I don't know, it doesn't take with
admin-
respect to effect, but I don't think it's going to take that effect because it is meant for this current dispensation, you know, appointees. But I think that it should be adopted as a national document moving forward.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I want to talk about is our culture, because Peter Drucker said that culture is strategy for breakfast. Why does he say so? Our culture has a lot of gift giving. And because you don't go to the elders or the chiefs empty-handed, you carry some gift. But we have turned even public service into gift demanding, that everything that they do for you, they demand gift. So we should watch that culture. The president have made everybody a whistleblower. That means that anything that you see, either you are giving gift or somebody is receiving the gift, there is a portal that you have to go and report so that we can work on it. That means Ghanaians should be vigilant to make sure that if an appointee is doing something wrong, don't hide it. Report it on the portal so that we can all work on that. I think moving forward, that is great. The other thing I want to talk about is that the document, he said, is not a ceremonial one. It's a living enforcement. Enforcement is really important. We have lofty ideas in our constitution, in these policies, but when it comes to enforcement, it's a problem because Ghanaians are very crafty in the way they will bypass some of these things.
Ghanaians are crafty?
Everywhere in the world, people are, because corruption in itself is done in secrecy. People hide what they do, and it's difficult to prosecute them because you need evidence at the court. I think about 80% of what the court uses to make a judgment is evidence. And because corruption happens in secrecy, it's very difficult to get those evidence. That is why we use a lot of perception indexes, you know, in corruption cases. So I think that the public should help the president to strengthen his hands so that we can all fight corruption. Because once we fight corruption, even research has shown that, you know, money, aid that comes to Africa, 25% goes to individual pockets. And recently, in what is happening at ORA, we can also see that a lot of people have looted the country. If we are able to get this money back, or, you know, public officials conduct themselves, and the money does not go to wrong hands, but we use them in fixing our schools, our hospitals, and our roads, I think that will make a big headway as a country.
Prof, I don't agree for you to say Ghanaians are crafty. Maybe generally human beings have a way, but to be specific, you need to.
We're talking about Ghanaian case now.
Yeah,
that is why.
But you need to do some research to know that exactly what you're saying, because for you to be that specific that Ghanaians are crafty. This document is
specific to Ghanaian situation. That is why I say Ghanaians. If I was talking about that, look, every individuals are crafty when it comes to policies. Even the policies of an organization, somebody will say, I'm sick, you know, they will lie on some issues. That is what I'm talking about, craftiness. So you have to make sure that you also know a step ahead how to handle those cases. Craftiness is not a negative word.
I'm coming to you, Prof, and I want to ask you directly, really, about the challenges, or you would call loopholes, that you see in, for instance, our Asset Declaration Act, as it were, and how you think we can deal with it to be able to complement what we already do have moving forward.
Well, you see, I think there are two things. The president has done his part, which is to produce this colorful 66-page document. The rest really depends on us. That is to say, first, the appointees, public officials, as well as citizens. As you know, we say it takes two to tango. It's going to be difficult for public officials, see, because when the president, for instance, says that you cannot use your position to influence job for somebody, or your family members should not be given any preference and that kind of stuff. And I think the issue of culture that my friend just mentioned is a very important. I was in a recent meeting when the OSP made a point about the assets declaration. Most of us will want to see these assets publicly declared so that they can be monitored. Then he made a very culturally relevant point. Ghanaians do not wish their assets or wealth to be known publicly for all kinds of reasons. So he's thinking of a better way to get it monitored privately, but effectively, because the current system where you declare, the Auditor General takes it and puts it away in a drawer somewhere, lock it up until you are leaving, and when you leave, nobody knows what happened. Doing those for 8 years, you just go away. I don't know whether you're giving back your original form or not. I really don't. So the whole asset declaration, as structured right now, doesn't really mean much. If you want to put teeth in it, then we have to find another way of making sure whatever you declare is known. And in the interim, during the years of service, we also know how much you got. If you finish adding it. And this brings me to a point that was just quickly debated between my sister and the professor about the craftiness. When the idea of asset declaration started, it's 32 years. Nobody has been held accountable to any assets so far as I know, over the past 8 years. And of course, also know that some public officials will have others to front for them. They build a house, they won't put their name on it. They'll put somebody else's name, whether a family member or friend, whatever. And that will certainly help you to hide that.
This is actually spelled out clearly. Sorry to interrupt you. This is actually spelled out clearly in the 66-page document that you shouldn't hide behind anybody, proxy or indirectly, to still be involved in anything that clearly has to do with conflict of interest. They spelled out in there.
You see, it's like, excuse me, but it's like going to church and the pastor telling you, or the Bible telling you, thou shalt not steal. God is not around. So those who want to steal, go ahead and steal. So look, that's why in my earlier remarks, I stressed on self-discipline and commitment. If you're a public officer and there is this code, and you're truly committed to what your president is holding you to, then you discipline yourself. All right? You won't have anybody to front for you and to hide your houses. But we also know that despite people who even are preachers themselves, they'll go out to steal. Not to mention ordinary church members. So whilst this document brings something new to us, I'm saying that the greatest challenge is how public officials will accept to live by these precepts that the document provides. So for me, that's a challenge. After the document, look, I went through quickly. It's beautiful. Everything conceivable is captured there. And if you tell a Ghanaian that, look, even if your brother is looking for a job, don't use your position to get your brother the job. Easily said. But realistically, is this possible in Ghana? I'm not questioning the credibility of the document, but I'm questioning the extent to which people will accept this kind of new precept. You see? Because we know that that's what people do. So I think probably what may help is a certain orientation to change the mindset of public officials.
And I will come back to you again, Prof. I want to come to you, Madam Mariada, in terms of the loopholes and what you think could be done to help us deal with this problem. And I want to prefix this with Article 17, actually. I think Section 179C of the Criminal Offences Act 1960, which specifically talks about using public office for profit. And it says a person commits a criminal offence who, A, while holding a public office corruptly or dishonestly, abuses the office for private profit or benefit, or B, not being a holder of a public office acts or is found to have acted in collaboration with a person holding a public office for the latter to corruptly or dishonestly abuse the office or public office for private profit or benefit. How do you think we can deal with these things just so that we're able to deal with the problem?
So, to add to what Prof has said, I just wanted to indicate that for the issue around assets, the issue around asset declaration, the loopholes that we would want to also add is the fact that the disclosure is not expansive as we would want to have it. We need to have a lot more public officers included in the free to ensure that it is capturing everybody and not just a few people. So very expansive. We need to ensure that it is visible, because currently as it is, it's not as visible as we would want it to be, because we want to see a regime where public officers are declaring their assets and these assets are monitored and verified. I know, for instance, in other countries, when you declare your asset, there is a management team that goes around to check to ensure that whatever you said you have is what you have put on record. And this is good for compliance, because you know that whatever you put down there is what would be monitored. And if there is anything around not being frank, there are punitive actions as well. And I'm not talking about Europe or America, I'm talking about practice in Africa. So we can also do same. We also know that the issues around fronting, which have been mentioned, come in. And the issue around culture, that has been the bane for us getting the law. We have heard if people disclose their assets, their relatives may even use that, and there will be charms and people will be killed and armed robbers will come to their homes. And that's how come we didn't get the act passed during the 2017 parliament. And in 2021, when the parliament said it never got there because they truncated at a certain point. So to be able to move this process forward and to do better, we believe that the Constitution and also the Criminal Offences Act, and for us, we have been very vocal on the fact that we need a definition of corruption that is expansive enough to then align with what we have in the UNCAC document. And let me say again that with the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, they didn't make an attempt to define corruption, even though for us, Transparency International defines corruption as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Entrusted power because you are giving power as a public officer. When you abuse it in any way for your own private gain or the gain of your cronies, then you are being corrupted. And then anyone also, even outside public office, who tries to influence you to then get what they want out of you for personal gain are also culpable. And remember that our definition is both ways. It's a double-edged sword, which talks about the one who corrupts, the demand and the supply side being equally culpable. Let's look at the UNCAC, which defines corruption in the preventive aspect to speak to the issue of illicit enrichment, abuse of power, abuse of discretion, bribery, illicit financial flows, and all the other elements which even Transparency International would not see as corruption. But then it talks about all the elements. And so if we have unexplained wealth being spoken to, but in our space it's not, then we are able to capture as expansively all the issues around corruption that currently are not captured in our law, so that we can then exhaustively say when we are going out after people who have not complied, we are doing so based on a regime that is very expansive, that is notable, and that captures the sections 179 of the Constitution as you spelled out.
Indeed.
With that, we'll continue to struggle with some of the issues we bring to adjudication, because is within the law, what is written, which is interpreted, and it will be difficult to do that. And I can tell you for a fact that in the French dispensation, most of them have that done, and it's serving their interest better than in our case.
See, the former French president goes through that procedure. He's still going through that even after many years of being out of office. I want to bring some of your comments to you, and then we'll go to the final phase of our conversation tonight. Bismarck Odoy says, good evening, Beatrice. I love your selected panel for today's program, especially Professor Inokwenchi, who always speaks to the points and avoids partisanship in his discussions. Prof, may God give you long life. Okay. And benefit from your rich experience. There is Nana Yao Yok. He says, in my opinion, they should... Okay, so I just have to scroll it up here. In my opinion, they should... Okay, I'll just read this. We are too matured for this kind of play. It is part of our plan. I mean, to breach so much their salaries. Okay, so he doesn't trust the fact that the salaries, an announcement from the president perhaps is going to be implemented, that those individuals will lose their salaries. Bliss Drum says, absolutely true. Influence peddling could atone to exploiting one's reputation or expertise to gain unfair advantage, offering rewards or benefits to individuals. There is, again, Charm Chapo. He is actually dealing with us journalists. He says journalists in this country must top up their game. See, nobody can hold leaders more accountable than you people can in favor of the ordinary. If you stop partisan politics and come together, trust me, that will be professional. And there is President J.M. Okay, happy that President Mahama is back in government. So a number of your comments coming in. Hopefully I'll be able to read some more before we wrap up the conversation. I want to come back to you. Perhaps I should start with you, Professor Okwenchi. Tomorrow will be exactly 120 days since the president was sworn into office, with a number of promises. I believe so far over 19 already done. But there are major ones that have not been done. The 24-hour economy, as well as the fight on illegal mining. In fact, we heard the president recently say that yes, he meant business when he talked about the fact that he was going to end it in 4 months, and yet here we are. He's not been able to deal with it. What do you expect?
I think that this morning I was saying that I'll give the president 80 out of 100, which is 80%, and that's an A. He has surprised a lot of people. I was talking to somebody in Kumasi this morning, and he was saying that he has a problem, and I also have the same problem, where if somebody's an MPP, they always listen to MPP channels and only what MPP says. And if somebody's an NDC, they always listen to... Aristotle said that it is the hallmark of an educated person to entertain a thought without accepting it. We need to entertain thoughts from different political dispensations, because political parties are just two sides of persuasion who want to serve the country philosophically. So we need to listen to each side, which is a worry for me. If you look at the Jumeirah, for instance, the first 120 days is going to create 10,000 jobs for the youth. And 10,000 jobs, according to research, if you get a job, it feeds about 3 or 4 other members of your family. So about 40,000 people will be benefiting from that. They are going to get finances, they are going to get skill training. So jobs, jobs, jobs. Because once you get jobs, you don't need any freebies. In any country, you have job, you can pay taxes, you can pay, for fees and everything. If you talk about the code of conduct, which is also one of the 120-day social contract, it's great. If you talk about the leanest government, look at the money the government saved from 6 months celebration.
And if you could wrapping up for me, so everybody will have a bite.
Okay, 6 months celebration. Last year it was done at my village, which is not a village, Koforidia, and I know the money we spent out there. Even the soldier passed out; he died. Now, it was celebrated quietly. We didn't spend much money, but I was expecting us to use the money to build a hospital or a school so that we can recover that as a monument. If you look at the taxes that have been scrapped, e-levy, emission taxes, and then bed taxes, all these things have been done within 120 days. So I think that the government has done well. We should strengthen the president's hands to do more. Prof,
your thoughts on 120 days. We're yet to see the commencement of 24-hour economy, the fight on illegal mining. Yes, majority of the promises fulfilled. Your own thought?
Well, even This Kanta, you mentioned the 24-hour economy. I think either today or yesterday, there was a big meeting on that at the presidency where they are really thinking through to put it together. And 24-hour economy, by the way, is not achieved in 4 months. It's going to be a long haul. But I think they are putting the basic structures in place. Look, overall, I think one can give the president a passing mark because the past around 20 days, he's tried his possible best to clear most of the promises that he made. There are a few that are outstanding, but I think, as I say, we shouldn't expect anyone to be able to meet all of them. But he has showed the intentions, and I'm sure as we move on, all his promises given in that document, the social contract, will be made. The achievement of some of them will be long-term, okay? And I think we should understand that. And I'm just hoping that his approach, as he has started, will be sustained, and he'll get his staff, his appointees, to follow him to make the kind of difference that he plans to make in the life of the country.
I want to come to you, Madam Mariada.
So for me, so far, so good. We are expecting to see a lot more when you look at the issues around the fight against corruption and the promises that were made in many of the instances. Oral, which was spoken to, has been started. They talked about working to get prosecutions and ensuring that there's transparency along that route. There is work that is currently ongoing. We've seen the Attorney General speak to the nation already twice. Again, many of the others would not be within the 120 days regime because they are longer term. Laws that are supposed to be made take time and their implementation same. So for me, I believe that we still have a long way to go. The president has done well. It is our expectation that from this, the way things have started, the president should keep at it, help sustain it, and he should also get all his appointees behind him to do so. And to do so would mean that when he needs to stretch out the rod, to not spare the rod and spoil the child, he should be doing so, because it is only within that space that we can see people being more serious and more proactive in the execution of their duties. We know as a society, people are not known for compliance, and it's happened in the past and people have gotten away with it. So the impression that it could be done again is very high. So the president should be cautious of that, and to sustain these efforts that we have achieved thus far, we need to all come on board. The media as well and civil society.
If you could be wrapping up for us.
We also come to accountability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm coming to you, Madam Nanaya Jantua. You're with the government, you're a presidential staffer. What more should we expect moving forward?
What we should expect is the president is going to ensure that whatever promise that he's made to the Ghanaian, he's going to fulfill it. And I've heard people talking about the 24-hour economy. Everybody is saying that, oh, we haven't done much. But truly, we are going to set this country on the foot of a 24-hour economy round about the clock. And if you look at a place like DVLA, they said they have started as a pilot. Leroy Cable Metals, which is a private sector company, has also started. And so the president is committed to ensure that the right things are done. We can see it through this bold step of ensuring that there is a code of conduct and even putting sanctions in place against his own appointees. Before, it wasn't like that. But I just want to say something to Prof. The days where you could build a house and put it in somebody's name is gone. Or you can get a property and put it in somebody's name. But by the time you realize that property, you have lost it. So it is not very fashionable these days for people to do that.
You're saying that under this government it will be more expensive. That's what you're saying.
It will be more expensive.
It will be more expensive to want to indulge
even before,
in these things.
We haven't heard the stories of people But before, it has been very expensive.
Let me ask you briefly, very briefly, in 30 seconds, if you can answer that for us. The president has admitted that in 4 months he couldn't fight illegal mining. Do you have an idea, possibly, when within this 4 years you'll be able to at least deal with it so we see some progress?
Seriously, the lands, is it lands and, I always say lands and forestry, lands and natural resources, yes. The minister has put in a lot of interventions, even when you look at Ashanti region, which is, I mean, we have a lot of galamsey issues over there, the forest and the rivers. The regional minister too has put in place a lot of interventions. We should also remember that galamsey is also about people's livelihoods, and we need the Jumewura, and some of the interventions are going to create jobs to pull some of these young ones from these issues of galamsey.
So do you have an idea within which time frame?
No, I'm not in the ministry is the one that has a time frame for it. So if you put this one on me, I know that we are all fighting the galamsey, but as the ministry, I don't want to go ahead of the minister. There's a minister who's in charge of doing that, and I believe that it will be prudent if he himself is able to come and tell us.
Thank you very much, Nana Ajantwa. She's a presidential staffer. We've also had with us Professor Enoch Opokwentry, governance and leadership expert. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda as well. Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, thank you again for joining us via video call. Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah is former UN senior governance advisor, as well as Madam Mariada, Executive Director, Ghana Integrity Initiative, Transparency International Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda tonight. Join us again next week. Coming up next is Ghana Tonight.